Okay, a pendulum of length L has time period t seconds. T is directly proportional to the square root of L. Right, let's get that information on the paper. So, t is proportional to the square root of L. Okay? Straight away, we can write, therefore, t is equal to some constant times the square root of L. Right, the length of the pendulum has increased by 40%. Work out the percentage increase in the time period. Okay? So, we've got that the time period is some constant times the square root of L. That means that for some time period t1, say, that's equal to k times the square root of some length 1. And for a different time period, t2, t2 must be equal to some constant times the square root of a different length. Let's call it L2. Okay? So, the length of the pendulum is increased by 40%. So we're going to increase, let's call it L1, okay? So therefore, T1 is equal to some constant times L1. We're going to increase L1 by 40%. We're going to call that L2. So, how do you increase L1 by 40%? L1 increased by 40% is L1 times 1.40. Increasing something by 40%, you express the 40% as 1.40 and multiply that by the thing that you're increasing. Okay? So, therefore, we'll call it T2, the longer time period. T2 is equal to some constant. So L2 is L1 increased by 40%. That's 1.40 L1. Okay? Which is equal to some constant. You can write this as square root of 1.40 times the square root of L1. Okay? And the order of multiplication doesn't matter. So that's equal to square root of 1.40 times k times the square root of L1. Okay, this is all T2. So, put the square root of 1.40 in your calculator and you get T2 equals 1.18321 something times k times square root of L1. Okay, so if we increase L1 by 40%, which is what we've done here, our new time period, T2, has been multiplied by 1.18 times the old T1, because, see, that, k times root L1, that's T1. Okay? So therefore, T2 is 1.18321 times T1. Okay? And T2 is the new time period. So therefore, we can say that the old time period has been increased by 18.3%. Because similarly, increasing L1 by 40%, you multiply by 1.40. If you multiply by 1.18 3, you're increasing by 18.3%. So therefore, it's an 18.3% increase. And that's the answer. Okay, does that make sense? T2 equals 1.183 whatever. So that 2 leaves the 3 alone. So it's an 18.3% increase times the old time period. So to summarise, write down t is directly proportional to the square root of L, then introduce the constant and write it as an equals, therefore t equals k times root L. And then you don't have to write this down, but nothing wrong with writing down if you want. T1 equals k times root L1, T2 equals k times root L2. And to increase by 40%, you write it as 1.4. And then sub that in for L1. It all comes down to having to take the square root of 1.4. So there you go. That's how it's done.